welcome to another video. This is going to be a little bit of a walk around or just a look at my 1976 Austin Mini. I've got a 1.8 liter Honda Vtec dual overhead cam under the hood. I used to have it all original, but want a little bit more speed and a little bit more power, so that now I have. And I can give you a little bit of a review of the car and what I think of it. And if you guys are planning on doing something like this, maybe I can give you a few tips and pointers on what to do and what not to do. So, let's start with that. I have a Z-Max body kit. It's on 13-inch mini lights. I'm also running a MBT2 kit from Vtec in the front, where you did not have to extend the front of the Mini at all. So when I had this car all done, I had the original engine in it, and I didn't want to modify the front fenders at all like the other kits used to have. So this is the MBT2 kit from Vtec, one of the first ones. To be honest, I had a lot of trouble with the car and the conversion. Wiring for one, they didn't have the kits for that stuff, so I had to figure out all the wiring. I had to figure out the torque steer issues that I had. I have limited slip differential in the front now, helical. Also, I had bottom A-arms in the bottom. Vtec actually fixed those up for me now, but I had both of them break. One while braking and one while actually going down the highway with my wife, which is pretty scary. It actually broke, and then the wheel came out on an angle and actually broke my flare. That's why there's a little bit of a crack here. It broke my flare, broke my shock, but Vtec replaced all the parts, but they never paid for the damages of the car or anything like that. But luckily no one was hurt. All that's been replaced with the new one piece on the bottom of the MBT2 kit now, so that's a lot better. I feel a little bit more safer like that now. The radiator when I first got it was actually out of an automatic, so I had a lot of overheating issues. So if a lot of guys are wanting to, do this conversion, think about it first. If you have an older Mini, I definitely, or something that's really nice like this, I definitely wouldn't recommend it. In a way, I wish I would have kept mine original, and just because if you have something nice like this, you can't go, like now that I'm at my age, where I just rather have an engine and something that, you don't have to worry about gravel, or you can go, the original Minis, you could go basically wherever you wanted to. You could go off-road, or bomb it around, do whatever you want, which that would be ideal. I'd love to have just a stock Mini with, a single overhead cam would be kind of cool. Nothing fancy, nothing crazy amount of power, just a single overhead cam. Original wheels, 10-inch would be great. And like a rooftop tent on the top, right? So you could just go camping. I think that would be awesome. And not have to worry about the paint or anything like that. With this, I've had it for quite a few years now, and you always got to watch and be careful. You get caught in the rain or hail, or it's just more of a headache. So that's the downfalls about having this. But in the ups, I guess it's beautiful. I think it's great. I love the Z-Max body kit on it. I tinted the windows, and now with the dual overhead cam, it's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous. I've finally got new tires on it. I'm running the Yokohama A539s, and they've been a really great tire. I've had to get a few different kind of tires for this car. I went through a couple different ones. These are the first ones I've actually ordered that are out of the UK. I used to run some other Chinese brand. I do not recommend doing that, especially when it's raining. This thing is scary. Original, you're good. Tall, narrow tires, the Mini handles great in the rain, but with these, the wide tires and the wider stance, it's quite a bit different. The other thing you have to remember is when you have the MBT2 kit in the front, it also will extend. It makes your front wider, so you have to. That's why I have the wheel arches and like the kit, and it extends it out quite a bit. So to counteract, the back has to be quite long. So I actually have, they're like this long of wheel studs on the back, and I have probably almost 3 inches of spacers on the back to compensate for the front. So it's got a very aggressive wide stance, and it does change the the handling of the car a little bit differently, but it does still handle like a go-kart. Also, you have a lot of torque steer. So what I've done under the hood, I can show you guys a couple of the modifications I've done. I've had this engine out 1,000 times. It's, trying to figure out torque steer issues, because before it would literally pull the wheel out of my hand. Like, you put your foot down in 4th gear and you're going the other way. That's how bad it was. And everybody's like, oh, you need to get the right, you need a wheel alignment or whatever it might be. Everything was dialed in properly. Air pressures were good. Tires were good. Trying to figure out everything. And then I put the helical limited slip in there. It still didn't help. I thought I was getting a lot more pulling on one wheel, but it didn't want to help very much. So what I had to end up doing was I built my own. The original mini engine comes with a dog bone and with a little polyurethane, and so what I did is I cut it and I shortened it, and I made a mount on the back of the head of the block, and I actually made a mount on the subframe and strengthened it into the bulkhead of the car. And I actually made a little mount in there. Also, what I've done is the intake. You have to cut the intake in half on the MBT2 kit, and a lot of guys are saying, well, then you have silicone 90s and it's up on an angle. And the first thing I noticed with that when I had the silicone 90s in there was that they would collapse. You'd sit there and idle, and then the thing would obviously just stop. So also for brakes, but the silicone, so the silicone 90s, they'd actually collapse under pressure. So I had to figure out a way to keep them from collapsing. And a lot of people are trying to tell you to weld it or get the intake welded. Well, the thing with an intake on a Honda, and to get the right angle to everything so the hood closes, it's very difficult to do that. To try to find out the right angle and tack it in position while it's in there so nothing rubs or vibrates. So I went with the silicone 90s still, and I put in some PVC. I have PVC like little angle pieces in there, and it just keeps them from collapsing. And I beveled them so that it keeps this airflow properly and everything like that. But we'll go for a drive, and I'll show you guys kind of what this thing can do and how it pulls. And yeah, so I will show you the modifications I've done on the hood, and then we'll go for a drive. So I'll kind of show you what it's like. But the other thing is that dog bone I put in is absolutely, it's a game changer. It changed the whole entire setup on how the car pulled now. It doesn't nearly as bad pull like it did before the one side. And the one side it used to pull like crazy. So this is the setup that I've got under the hood. It's not the cleanest, but it's clean enough for me to keep everything from rubbing and working properly, and the room that I have. So I also have that big ugly thing in the background. You're probably wondering what that is, but that is my original heater control. So I have high and low. That's just a high and low. So that's what I got in there for right now. I got the alternator, the fuel rail, these vents and stuff. You kind of probably think, oh, like that's kind of iffy and ugly, but there's not a hell of a lot of room. And that is the original intake vent for the fresh air vent into the cab. So what I do is I just ran it up front like this with a scoop off of another Mini that I had, because the another one is down here, and it takes cool air up into the cab while you're driving. And that is a must with the Minis, because it gets hot in there. So driving with the wife, she'd always get hot, so what I had to do is route this one over here, and it goes up and over the tire. And that actually throws some pretty good air into the cab now. Also, I heat wrapped the headers. I've heat wrapped the headers. That helped quite a bit. And I've also tapped the head down there where the red gauge is. These are all the little things that Vtec owners don't actually tell you. And I'm getting right in there, and I'm going to show you kind of like what goes on. So I've installed the temperature gauge here. I actually tapped the head and put it into here. You're probably wondering why I have tape on here. Well, that's just what I'm doing for now, because I don't have a filter that'll fit, and everything needs to work properly. So a lot of guys will just have the filter up here, but then you're sucking hot air right from behind the radiator all the time, and there's no room for anything. So I used to have my temperature gauge, this piece for the sending unit used to be into the heater, one of the heater cords or lines down here, coming out of the block, and then I had to screw it into a T, and it was really bulky, and of course I didn't have any place to run my intake because there's no other place for the intake to sit that's not going to be grabbing hot air. So what I did is I routed it down here, moved all that temperature sensing unit stuff, and I put it down to here on my intake. Now I've had this intake on here for quite a long time. It's actually the original filter, like a K&N that I've modified and put in it. It is super tight. Everything is so tight in here. So yeah, like, and I have to run my heater hoses into the car, and the radiators down here, you're getting a little bit of airflow, and I have the electric fan on there now that actually kicks in at a certain temperature. But everything still gets hot, but I've never actually had it boil over. So, but this is my Vtec. It's not perfect. It's not like mint, you know, but everything works. That's basically the main thing. So, the other things you have to tell you is I made a bracket to hold the intake from moving. I made a bracket here also for the throttle assembly that you got to make. The silicone 90s down there that are, you got to make sure they're all lined up there properly, and it's all ovally, you know, it's like, it's not the perfect fitments of everything, so you really got to be careful what you're doing there, making sure all your wirings and everything's all right. I actually drove this thing up to BC one time, to Vancouver from Saskatchewan, and the distributor kept going on me, and oh my god, it was one of the worst trips we've ever had with the wife. It was raining. Minis are not known for keeping water out of the car. It was almost like I had like a bailing bucket in the car. It was pretty bad. So yeah, there's not a lot of room for everything. Like, you know, if you want your windshield wipers, you got your windshield wiper motors here. I don't even have a reservoir for washer fluid because, like, you know, guys, where are you going to put this stuff? You know, you don't have a lot of room. So I'm trying to utilize as much space as I possibly can, and it's so tight to keep everything on here. And that's why a lot of guys will do flip front ends. It's easier to get at stuff like that. But I don't want the fiberglass banging around. I had a perfectly good Mini to start with, and that's what we ended up doing. So when we first got the Mini, they told us everything about cutting it all out. A lot of guys now actually won't even cut the drip rail off, where I did, and now they say you don't have to, but I don't know. Mine, I had to, because the head is like right there. So as for the alternator, down here by the alternator, a lot of guys probably don't tell you this either, but the fuel rail is like literally like this close to the alternator. It is almost touching. I had to shave the bolt head down in order for the fuel rail to actually fit onto the car with the alternator here. So it's very, very crazy. I've actually had one of the alternator brackets break on me from Minitech. You know, I'm not trying to bash Minitech, but I've actually had the alternator bracket break. The bolts, make sure you put nylon locking nuts on the bottom bolt, because that thing will vibrate its way out. I've had the bolts come out tons of times while you're driving down the highway. I'm not too sure about the revving of the actually, if it's over revving or over spinning the alternator with the pulley system, how it's set up. I'm not too sure. The other big issue I had with this thing was the shock mounts. Now, shock mounts on the Vtec. What do we got here? So, if you can see them down there, you can see how they are angled way out now. And before, how can I put this? They were not triangled from the very bottom. So, what ended up happening is the shock mount would actually bend. Every time I hit a bump, it actually bent inward because it wasn't a triangled shape. So it started bending, and then what would happen is I actually ended up I didn't know why. I couldn't tell. So what ended up happening is I was chopping out a big notch there where my pulley on my alternator went. Because the first time I started driving this thing, and you know, you're driving around or you're driving a couple bumps. So what would happen is when I'd hit a few bumps, this shock tower would actually started bending inward. And as it bent inward, it pushed on the body panel of where the actual shock mount was bolted to. and what would happen was it was pushing the steel in, and then it would rub on my alternator and actually get sparks shooting out through the hood while I was trying, you know, while you're stepping on it. And that wasn't very fun. And then also underneath, way down under here, there is the, just underneath the alternator, you can't probably see it, but there is the dog bone in there that I mounted in there. And that has done wonders. So, let's go for a drive, guys. Okay guys, so this is inside the Vtec. It is extremely warm out. I'm going to roll down the window. You might get some wind noise. Sorry if you do, or some vibration. I don't have a perfect camera stand. But I'll bring you along for the ride anyway. So, oh, it is hot. We'll shut the stereo off. And we'll turn this thing around. Custom dash I made, I used all the same vents. I mounted my ECU down underneath the floor here, underneath the heater. And yeah, so this is my Mini. So we'll let it warm up a little bit, and then we'll go for a little bit of a drive. Again, I'm sorry if it's really vibrating, because there's not really I can do about it. I'll try to show you what it's all about here in a second. I'll do a quick pull and you can kind of get an idea of what it sounds like, what it goes like. And yeah. Don't get me wrong, it still is fun. That's second gear, and if you put your foot down a little bit, it actually stays straight now. Before, it would have just turned around. Just even that slow. It was that bad without that dog bone in there. So we got a little bit of traffic here. But we got a lot of traffic here, I'm not gonna lie. So, the other thing you're not gonna notice about is everybody tells you need a fuel pump. So you're gonna get a Walboro fuel pump, and it is loud. When it gets hot, it'll whine, and it whines like crazy. So, okay. Pull this thing out here now. Okay, you guys ready? So I'll take this out for a little bit here. So I'll do just a first gear rolling start.